everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be my worst / most disappointing books of 2022. I've managed to get it down to 10 books with this video. If you've already seen my best books of 2022, I picked 12 books for that video and I will link it above and in the description box. So if you've not watched that one, you can go and watch that one as well. Obviously it goes without saying that this is just my opinion. Please don't be offended if any of these books are some of your favourites or ones that you enjoyed. Some of these books I can totally understand why people like them. I feel like they just weren't for me personally. But some of them I do feel like were just kind of bad books and I wouldn't recommend them. So the category of books that I'm going to start with are books that I thought I was really going to like and I ended up not liking. Based on other people's reviews, they were just really hyped up for me and I ended up just giving them, I think, like a 2-star rating. Like, I just didn't like them. And the first one is really sad actually because it's Bunny by Mona Awad. This is sad because I bought this book specifically from like eBay, this specific edition, because I thought I would really like this book. I can totally see why people like it, but for me something just didn't work about it. So this is the US book cover because I think it looks prettier than ours, which I will put here in the UK. So it's kind of sad that I ended up not really liking this. So this is a book about a girl called Samantha who goes to this elite college and she's on this writing course, and the only other people on her specific course are this group of 4 young women who are very like overly affectionate with each other. They are like glowing, they've got amazing hair, they all speak to each other in these like really sweet little voices, they call each other Bunny. And one day, after they've known each other for quite a while and just not really got on, Samantha gets invited to what these other girls call a smut salon. Samantha then quickly gets sort of wrapped up into this bizarre world with them, and what comes from this is a weird mix of like horror, fantasy elements. It's a bit of a weird book to describe. It's not what I expected, but I don't know what I expected, to be honest. I just feel like I didn't get this book. When I was reading it, I just wasn't enjoying it. I feel like it was quite subtle and you were meant to read into it more than what was actually like said on the page, but I just didn't really understand it. I considered DNFing this book many times, even when I was so close to the end. I could only read like 10 to 20 pages at a time and I was just so bored. Like, I never got fully invested, I didn't get hooked into it, and it felt like a bit of a slog to get through. I kept waiting for something to happen that would make me really enjoy this book and it just never really came. I will say that it's well written, and I did read some like Reddit posts after that tried to explain what this book was about, and it makes sense, but I don't know, I don't think this was for me. And I knew that this one was going to be a bit hit or miss, but I definitely thought I would be more on the hit side rather than considering DNFing it like 10 pages before the end. Like, I just didn't get it. So unfortunately this one was one of my most disappointing books this year because I really thought this would be like at least a 4-star. The next book that really disappointed me was Lapvona by Ottessa Moshfegh, I think is how you say her name. This one really disappointed me because I've really wanted to get into Ottessa Moshfegh books this year, but I thought Lapvona would be a really good one for me because it's a dark, disturbing book set in a medieval fiefdom, like a village type thing, and it basically follows multiple different characters that are all a bit weird and disturbing. And straight away this book reminds me of The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock, which actually made it into my best books of 2022. So this book really confused me as to why I didn't get into it. Again, like with Bunny, it took me a long time to finish this book and it felt like a slog. I could only read like 20 pages at a time. I can't pinpoint why I didn't like this book because on paper the idea is totally up my street. The writing was good. I kind of liked that distant third-person style narrative where you hop between different characters. I like dark elements to my books, and there was like gross things in this book, and whilst I was editing my best books of 2022 I realised how many books I was like, oh, I love this, it's so gross, which is a bit concerning. But with this book I didn't like the gross stuff in it. It felt too like forced in there. It felt like it was put in there just to be gross and it didn't really serve much other purpose. Like, multiple times reading this book I thought, what is the point of this book? Why was it written? What is it trying to achieve? And it sounds like that's a bit bitchy about a book because somebody's written this and I feel horrible like criticising it, but I just didn't get it. Like, I didn't get what the point was. It ended in a weird way. I felt like I wasn't rooting for anybody, and it put me in a really slumpy mood where I just didn't want to read. But I will read Eileen, I'll give that one a try, and then if I don't like that, then I'll probably just decide that she's not for me as a writer. I do think it's a bit weird because I've seen so many good reviews, I've seen barely anything negative about her, so I was really disappointed with this one, unfortunately. Another book that I went into with probably too high expectations was Near the Bone by Christina Henry. I watched Gabby Reeds talk about this book and she really loved it, and then I recently watched Hayley, who's one of my favourite YouTubers, read this on Gabby's recommendation, and she really loved this book as well. And they are two YouTubers that are like my go-to for book recommendations. I feel like I have a very similar taste to them, so to not like this one was very unexpected for me. This is a book about a woman who lives on a mountain with her husband, who is very abusive. They're very isolated, and they start to suspect that there's a Bigfoot style creature living on this mountain with them. And the reason why I didn't like this book is because the main character was so annoying. I feel horrible saying that because she was clearly very vulnerable and she's in this horrible abusive relationship, and if this situation was happening in real life, then I definitely would not find that person annoying. But I feel like her kind of character just didn't fit this book. I just feel like reading this book stressed me out because reading from Matty, I think her name was, reading from Matty's perspective was so frustrating. She was so wrapped up in her fear of her husband, which is totally understandable and makes sense. And there was moments where she was desperate to like leave the house, but she couldn't just in case he came back. And it makes sense, but it was frustrating as hell to read. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing in the writing because I can totally understand why she acted the way that she did, but for me it was stressful to read and I just didn't really like her as a character. I also thought there was a lot of stupid mistakes and decisions in this book from both Matty and like some of the other characters, where they would like accidentally leave weapons behind or not bring food because it was too heavy and just things like that. Plus, I read a lot of this book on audio. Matty's inner monologue would have like a few different versions of herself, so there was this like babyish voice which was her at her weakest where she was scared, and then there was another voice that was her like trying to big herself up and stuff, and the voice that the audiobook narrator used for this like baby voice, oh my god, it was so horrible. Like, I couldn't listen to the audio because it was just so like frustrating. I prefer my main characters to be a little bit more determined rather than somebody who you've got to like wait throughout the novel for them to finally get to that point. I just needed that character development to come way quicker. Also, I thought that the monster wasn't scary at all. Like, it wasn't really doing much, and I also thought that this book ended a bit too quick as well, now that I think of it. It all resolved a little bit too conveniently, so I probably won't recommend this one. The next category of books that I'm going to talk about are books that I picked up because I'd read and loved something that the author had written previously. So the first one on this list is The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. This one's really sad because Gillian Flynn is one of my all-time favourite authors. Gone Girl changed my whole reading perspective, and I'd never read The Grown Up, which is a short story that she's written, so I picked it up earlier this year when I realised that my Goodreads reading challenge was really far behind, so I read like 3 short stories in a day just to like catch up a little bit. And I ended up giving this one 2 stars. This book is about a woman who has a very unconventional lifestyle. She starts off as a sex worker and then she becomes like a dodgy fortune teller. This woman comes into our main character's shop and I think she believes that her house is haunted, and our main character ends up agreeing to go and visit this house and try and get rid of the spirit. But we as the reader know that she's a little bit dodgy, so we're not sure how that's gonna play out. I liked this book to start with. I thought it was quite creepy and I liked the main character, how she was a bit morally grey and you didn't know whether you could fully trust her or not. But I thought the ending of this short story had too many twists in it that went a little bit too quickly back and forth. Before you'd process one, something else happened, and it was just a little bit much, I thought. I didn't really love the ending and it just felt a little bit underwhelming based on what I thought it was going to be. When I finished it, I just thought, oh, okay. It just didn't do half as much as what I expected it to based on who wrote it. So for me, this was just a definite miss. The next book on this list is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This one I think is a bit of a controversial one maybe. I read Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is just here. And I love that book. So I went into this one thinking I would love it because it's about this artificial intelligence doll friend type character called Clara, and she ends up being bought by this little girl called Josie. From then on we follow Clara's perspective as she's Josie's friend and as Josie's growing up, and just sort of overseeing this family that she lives with. I just didn't get this book. Again, I gave it a 2-star. I really wanted to learn more about Josie and her relationships, but because we're following from Clara, there were bits that we just didn't really get to see. I didn't understand all of Clara's thoughts. There was some sort of machine that she's obsessed with, and I didn't know what that was meant to be, ever. I thought that her obsession with the sun, which is obviously where the title comes from, I thought it was kind of boring. I think it was meant to allude to some like religious entity, but for me it just felt a bit repetitive. With this one, I remember just waiting and waiting for like a big twist or something to be revealed that would make this book really special, and I kind of guessed the reveal earlier on. It still didn't really change anything for me. I still didn't fully understand what this book was trying to say and what it was trying to do. The only bit that I really liked was the epilogue, or like the final chapter. That was the only bit that stirred up any emotion in me, to be honest. I could tell that it was the same author as Never Let Me Go. It had that same understated writing style, but for some reason in this one I just wanted way more from it. The last book in this category is Cross Her Heart by Sarah Pinborough. As you probably already know if you've watched my videos before, Behind Her Eyes was my favourite book of 2021, and I'd never read anything else by her before, so this year I decided to read Cross Her Heart. I'd seen quite mixed reviews for this book, but I've also seen a lot of mixed reviews for Behind Her Eyes. A lot of people hated the ending, gave it 1 star, whereas I gave it a 5 star, so I thought maybe it would be the same with this book. It was not. This book is really, really bad. I gave it 2 stars, I think, because the first 150 pages of this book I really, really loved. We're following 3 different women. One is a mum, the mum's best friend, and then the daughter. It kind of alludes to this mysterious past where the mum and the daughter have had to like constantly run and hide, and the mum can't trust anybody, so it gets to a point where she's met this guy and she's starting to like him and want to like lower her walls, but then something really big happens and there's this huge twist which I really, really loved, and we see flashbacks from this diary, this childhood diary, which builds up to what happened, and it all had some really dark elements to it which I was really enjoying. And then the ending of this book just went completely off the rails. Something happens which is totally unbelievable, totally unrealistic. I don't mind an unbelievable, shocking ending, because if I can predict it, then I probably don't like it. If it completely floors me, then I probably love it. This one floored me in a bad way because I just didn't get it. Like, I'm pretty sure I pulled like this face when I read it, and it was so annoying because I really liked the first like third or like the first half of this book. I was really, really enjoying it, and then it just went completely doolally. Don't recommend this book. Highly recommend Behind Her Eyes, but I am still going to read, I think I've got 13 minutes downstairs, and then I also want to read Insomnia, so I'm not giving up on Sarah Pinborough yet. The last category of books I'm going to talk about are books that I just actively dislike. I do not recommend them. I'm not saying that they're really bad, but I just did not like them at all. The first one that we have is Smile by Roddy Doyle. All I knew about this book is that it had a surprise ending which kind of turned the whole novel on its head, and I really wanted to read it basically just for this ending. So this is a book about a guy called Victor, who I think is in his 50s. He goes to the pub every night by himself just to have a drink, feel normal. He's very lonely. And then one night he comes across this guy who's called Fitzpatrick, who's in the bar, who thinks that he knows Victor, and he's coming over to him like, oh, we went to school together, and Victor just cannot place this guy at all. So it kind of brings back all these memories for him of their time at school, and it was a school led by Christian Brothers. He obviously had a very troubled time there. He's also reminiscing on his career as a music journalist and with his ex-wife Rachel, and I found all of that to be quite boring, to be honest. I liked his relationship with Rachel, but everything else I was a little bit bored by, and it did feel like a bit of a slog, but because I knew that this ending was coming, I was just going through it to see what happened at the end. And it was quite a short book as well, so it wasn't like too bad. But the ending of this book is possibly the worst ending I've ever read. Not for like it being bad, but just it was so depressing. Like, I just kind of wanted to get this book out of my memory because it was just messed up. I think it was just shitty of this author to do, and I didn't like it at all. I put it down and I just thought, why would you do that? And I'm not even going to say that it like really emotionally impacted me, because it didn't. I didn't care for the character as much as I would have liked, but the intention of this book is to make you like him and then just emotionally destroy you. What's it called? You know what everyone says A Little Life is?
can't remember what it's called. There's that phrase, I'll put it on the screen, where they say that authors just kind of shove a load of horrible, emotional, depressing stuff in a book for no purpose at all other than to upset the reader, which kind of tricks you into thinking that it's a really good book because you're upset by it, but it's kind of manipulative by the author and like there's no real purpose to it. This book felt like that. I didn't like it, didn't like what the author was trying to do, and I just kind of want to forget that I ever read this book. So 2 stars, because I don't like giving books 1 star because it wasn't bad in terms of it was trash. I just didn't like it. But for me, it kind of felt like a 1, but I don't feel like a lot of books deserve a 1. Although there is a 1 coming up, so wait for that. The next book on this list is one of the only non-fiction books I read this year, and it is The Prison Doctor by Dr. Amanda Brown. I read this book off the back of reading This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, I think, and also The Secret Barrister, and I really liked those books and the insight into those professions which you tend not to know a lot about. So when I saw that there was a Prison Doctor one available on audio, I jumped straight on it, but I did not like this book at all. I didn't really like the author's voice, as in she came across as a little bit snobbish about her profession. So there was a bit where she like met with doctors, like other doctors just in general at a conference, and she felt very like above everyone because she'd seen a lot more in this prison. So the other doctors didn't know as much as she did, and she just found it difficult to talk to them. And I thought that was really like shitty, because just because you're dealing with arguably more like interesting, complex people doesn't mean that other doctors haven't dealt with that sort of thing before, or don't deal with that with the general public and don't have as hard of a time. Besides, she never even had a hard time in this prison. Like, in this book, you would expect, right? If you work in a prison, you're probably going to get some shit and you've just got to deal with it. You've got to put up with it. If you're good to them, they'll probably be good to you. I get that. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, surely. And she made out that she is so like loved by the prisoners. They're all so appreciative of her, which is lovely and nice, and I hope they are. But I just didn't really believe it. Like, I didn't buy it. There was a bit in this book where she got catcalled for like the first time, and it was by one of these prisoners, and then the next day she approaches this prisoner and says like, why did you catcall me? And then he says, oh, sorry Dr. Brown, I didn't know it was you, like, you're lovely, but I just do it to whoever walks past, it's just a random thing. So even the one time that she gets a little bit of abuse, it's like, oh, sorry Dr. Brown, it wasn't meant for you, you're just the best, I would never have done it to you. That might not have been the author's intention, but that's how it read to me. I just found it hard to believe that she's writing about this career which she's saying is so difficult and so hard and very emotionally taxing, and you're dealing with some really dangerous people, but then also saying that they all love her and she's really helped everyone's lives and they tell her that. And I just thought these two ideas of what you're trying to portray are not meshing. To say that she struggled to talk to other doctors who hadn't been through what she'd been through, I was like, what have you been through? You've had an easy life in this prison, apparently, according to yourself. So I just didn't like it. And I did have a copy of like the second book downstairs, which was about her time working in a women's prison, and I'm just gonna get rid of it if I've not already, because I don't want to read it. This is no hate to Dr. Amanda Brown. I just didn't like the tone of this book, and I just feel like I'd learn more reading from like a different perspective or more of a educational non-fiction rather than this woman. So unfortunately, not really something that I want to recommend. The next book on this list is Mother Loves Me by Abby Davis, and I was just looking at my list on my computer and I like clicked onto this book and I just went, oh, this book. Okay, so this is about a girl called Mirabelle who lives with her mother, and the mother dresses her up like a doll every day. She puts makeup on her, dresses her in these like cutesy outfits, and calls her Mirabelle. This woman brings another girl home called Clarabelle, and she starts like putting all her attention into her, and Mirabelle starts to suspect that mother will get rid of her because she only needs one doll. She's got this brand new little 5-year-old girl to play with, and she doesn't need Mirabelle, who's 13, anymore because she's getting a bit too big. She doesn't fit in the outfits that mother has bought for her and stuff. So this is, if you couldn't tell, clearly a book about 2 kidnapped little girls living with this mother who is a crazy lady. This book frustrated the hell out of me. I listened to it on audio. Maybe I need to stop doing that, because when the audiobook narrator is doing my head in, I don't like the book. The voice for mother was like weirdly deep, and the amount of times I had to listen to the words Mirabelle, Clarabelle in this awful voice. Oh my god. So Mirabelle's trying to escape, to get away from Mother and trying to protect Clarabelle and stuff. And this Mother just kept showing up at every opportunity and thwarting their plan, and it just kept pissing me off because I just didn't like it anymore. Like, I was getting so bored, so like frustrated. It was repetitive. I hated the Mother. She was like the Terminator. There were so many times when she was like injured or something happened and she'd just get back up again, and I just thought, just get back down, like, it's over. I'm so bored, I'm so done. Let these two little girls go. I'm done. So there was a tiny bit that was good. There was a little reveal about something else that the Mother had done, which I thought was well done. It was pretty good writing at that point, but the rest of it I felt just did my head in. And I don't know if this is a bad book because I looked on the ratings and a lot of people gave this 5 stars. Maybe I need to stop listening to books on audio because maybe it's the voices that piss me off. I don't know. Unfortunately, not a thriller that I would widely recommend. It might just be me. It might just be the audiobook. I don't know. But either way, this book has left a very annoying stamp where it makes me literally groan when I think about it. So yeah. And then the last book on this list, I feel really bad about this, but it was my only 1 star of the year. It's this book, which is Pigeon Blood Red by Ed Duncan. I've only been sent 2 books ever. And this is one of them. This was the first book that I was ever sent. It was sent over from America, I think, and it came with this lovely little note. It pains me that I really hated this book. I can't even remember what this book was about. It's so Rico, he's an underworld enforcer. He's meant to retrieve a gangster boss's pigeon blood red ruby necklace and teach the double-dealing cheat who stole it a lesson. A job like 100 before it, but the chase goes sideways and takes him from the mean streets of Chicago to sunny Honolulu, blah 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 blah. This book was badly written, I'm sorry. Look at all these, can you see all these bits where I've like folded the page under? These are all times where women were talked about like shit. Or there was some cringy, like, let me just have a look for you. Okay, so this is a description of our character Rico. He was handsome in a sinister, foreboding way. He had an air of danger that seemed to attract women as much as his rugged good looks did. And then he has like a sidekick, right? Jerry, a little shorter and much more slender. He always tried harder than Rico because things never came as naturally to him as they did to Rico. Most of the time Jerry accepted this as a fact of life because dwelling on it only depressed him. He knew he wasn't the man Rico was or wanted to be, and that wasn't going to change no matter what he did, so why worry about it? Besides, he could take solace in knowing he wasn't alone. No one else could measure up to Rico either. Like, this guy was just so hyped and he was just shit. Oh god. He managed to glimpse Jean's perfectly contoured breasts, barely restrained by her black bra. I'm not even going to include that because that is gross and my family watch this channel. Every description of women is about their body. Women are pointless in this book. Their only purpose is to cry and be damsels in distress and for the men to fancy them. That is literally it. Even when they're crying and in distress, the guys are still looking at their body, still looking at their face, still wanting to hold them close and make them feel better. And it's just fucking gross. So the men were just pathetic. Like, they're meant to be these secret assassins, enforcers, whatever. They would see a woman and be distracted. They would lose track of things because a fit woman walked past. It was just ridiculous. This book is clearly written for men. Although, as I'm looking at Goodreads reviews, top review by a woman, 4 stars. Another review by a woman, 4 stars. Another woman, 3. Another woman, 3. It's getting like 3, 4 stars. And I don't get it at all because I thought this book was really, really bad. So because I was sent this for a review, I posted it on my Instagram, which I will try and link below, which goes into a little bit more detail about what I did like and what I didn't like. Obviously, as this was sent, I didn't want to be a total bitch, but I did also stay honest and say that I didn't like it, but in a very polite way. But we're past being polite now because it's been like a year since I read this book, and this is the first book that was sent to me and it's not good. So I will be keeping this book because it's the first book that's been sent, so I want to keep it just for the memes. And I actually kind of like the cover and like it's kind of a nice copy, but it's no, so bad. Sorry, but it's really bad. Okay, that is all the books that I wanted to rant about today. Thank you for watching this video. Please let me know what books you've hated this year, or if you've liked any of these books in this video, let me know, because that will be interesting as well. Thank you anyone who's been watching my videos this year. I really appreciate it, and I hope to be a little bit more active in 2023. Fingers crossed. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!